I'm really excited to continue
But it's
the
the demand in the market.
focus will be
Because
on
people
options
outside
for
the
future water
state come to
as well as
Arizona. Are you
conservation,
crazy?
reclamation,
This is
water
an
quality.
easy buy. Why wouldn't
Please
you?
help me welcome Fireside Chat Moderator, Director,
And so
Water
that's what's
Infrastructure
happening
Finance
to EDS.
Authority of Arizona, Dr. Podolak.
And it's just it's been that way for a while, but now it's still that way for other reasons.
Hello. So I'm not from the West Valley, so I appreciate the invitation. I'm from East Phoenix, but I'm not from Arizona either. But when I first came to Arizona, it was through Luke Air Force Base, a couple of tours of duty out there. So I feel a little bit nostalgic and happy to be back in the West Valley. I'm the moderator. It's going to take a little prerogative and plug my agency. So the Water Infrastructure Finance Authority of Arizona is it's a state agency that's been around for a couple decades. We have one job, which is to bring public money to water challenges. We've been doing that for a few decades with the state revolving funds, money that comes from the EPA. We've done significant work out in the West Valley, over $100 million worth of loans to the city of Buckeye for projects including the Jackie Neck water campus. We've been working with the city of Peoria a number of times on stormwater projects and clean water projects. And so our goal is with us to continue the success of federal programs where we build on new programs. And I think that's really what's got us in the news, some good, some bad, over the last couple of months was the new programs that we're standing up there. Programs like the Long-Term Water Augmentation Fund, $1 billion from the state legislature to help augment the water supplies in Arizona. For some projects like Leslie and Ron were talking about, the SCIF, the BART, working with people to help finance their portions of those projects, as well as imported water, looking outside the state. The legislature wants us to spend 25 or 75% of that money, at least 75% of $1 billion, looking to bring in new water supplies. And Leslie talked about it. All the easy stuff's done, and so I'm under no illusion that what we have is a daunting task ahead of us. But I think the power of the elected officials in the room, the power of the economic development interests in the room, I think are what we need to bring big projects like that to fruition. The other thing we have right now is our Water Conservation Grant Fund. So we've heard a lot of good talk this morning about things, the history of conservation in the state. We're trying to add to that success. So about a week and a half ago, we opened a grant program for $200 million of water conservation money that the state is going to want to put on the ground in the next year in Arizona. So come to our website, easywitha.gov. Right on the front there, you'll find a link and all the information on how you can get yourself a piece of that $200 million to help conserve water. So that's all I have to say about me. I would like you to join me in welcoming our two panelists, we say long time advocate of the West Valley, CAP board member Lisa Atkins, and then Buckeye Mayor Eric Orsborn. And all of this, is this on? All of this may look like the panels we had this morning. This is totally fundamentally different because it's a fireside chat. So I think we all need to use a little bit of imaginations. The nice blue light here, well, imagine that's a flickering fire, and we're just going to talk about water in the future of the West Valley. We have two people joining me today. We hope to have a third, but we couldn't get her here in person. But we did want to share a welcome video from what we hope to be our third panelist, our Arizona Senior Senator Kirsten Sinema. And so I think we should be teed up. I can't see that screen, so if I hear her talking, we'll know that we're on.
Hi everyone, I'm Kirsten Sinema, Arizona Senior Senator. I'm sorry I couldn't make it in person, but I'm honored to participate in this year's WESTMARC Economic Development Summit. As I have throughout my time in public service, I'm committed to finding solutions that benefit all Arizonans, regardless of their political affiliation. Ensuring our state has access to a reliable and sustainable water supply is one of my top priorities. Arizona's economic growth and prosperity depend on strengthening our state's water supply. To continue fueling jobs and expanding opportunities for Arizonans, we must secure our water future. We all know that Arizona has long been at the forefront of planning for and responding to drought, and we bear the brunt of the current crisis. As you all know, I refuse to move forward with the Inflation Reduction Act, until significant resources for drought resiliency for Arizona and the entire American West were included. This approach brought us a huge win and helped us secure $4 billion in water resiliency funding. I've now turned my attention to implementation and ensuring Arizona gets its fair share of these dollars. This funding will allow us to fund both short-term solutions such as conservation projects, but also look at long-term infrastructure and efficiency projects that limit demand. Our work on water is far from over. As I continue working with my colleagues to identify and pass policies that will help secure our water future and address Western drought conditions, my message is clear and simple. The Colorado River system cannot be allowed to fail. And while the $4 billion secured in the Inflation Reduction Law was a step in the right direction, we know it's not nearly enough. That's why you have my commitment to continue working to secure Arizona's water future, to support the economy we have today, and bolster the state's future. Americans across the country enjoy food produced by farmers who rely on the Colorado River, and major cities and their economies are powered by the electricity from Colorado River dams. I'm excited about the opportunities that lie ahead for Arizona. Our state is home to some of the most innovative and entrepreneurial people in the country, and we can harness that to build a resilient water future for our state. We all know that more needs to be done, and collaboration and cooperation will be key to addressing our short-term challenges while planning for the long term. Many of you in this room are partners who continue to help my team and I develop innovative, solutions-focused policies to strengthen and ensure Arizona's water security. I wish you all a productive summit and look forward to seeing you in person soon.
So 20 minutes for our fireside chat. We still have another video in there, so we may set the record for the most TV during a I want to start with some historic context. Lisa, she referred to you earlier as a historian, so will you talk to us a little bit about what you've seen in terms of West Valley growth during your many years of community leadership, and maybe how some of the water issues have changed in that time?
So I've had the unique experience of working for a cotton farmer since 1976, who went on to serve the state after 18 years in the state legislature, to serve more than 20 years in the United States House of Representatives as a member of the Congress. When you work for somebody who has created his entire life on the land, you begin to understand, even when you were born and raised in the state, in the city, how every one of the resources that we have in the state of Arizona has a unique use and requires our stewardship. So it was a unique opportunity for me to work side by side with Congressman Bob Stump for those years, in the years where we were growing, where the West Valley was determining its own future, which this crowd today tells me was a very successful plan for the growth of the West Valley and the future of the West Valley. And to learn the process of how we leveraged our own interest for having a successful state in many arenas to build off of what the state contributed during wartime and the influx of population and how we were going to apply all of that to our future. I think we have a very bright future in front of us, and your being here today is a good example of that.
Thank you. How about on the water side? I know we're here to talk about water, but what are your views on sort of some of those long-term water changes or plans out there?
So as with any resource, if you're not acutely aware of how that resource is being used, I used to love to hear people say that they were driving down the road or driving down the freeway and saw all this water on land, and how in the world, if you live in the middle of a desert, can you in fact irrigate all that land? I think when the necessity is that in order to be able to continue your business or to be able to support your family or your community, you learn how to harness those resources for use in the future. And I would argue that given our history in this state, way before statehood, and every year that the state has grown, and the fact that we continue to grow and we continue to attract businesses that are manufacturing businesses, they wouldn't be here if they didn't have respect for what we've invested in the past to make sure that we have the opportunity to grow in the future.
All right. So, Mayor, I've got a question written down here that I think you, about, are we running out of water? I think you sufficiently nailed that in the recorded video, but what do you want to add? Really well done, but what do you want to add for the crowd in terms of understanding that maybe misinformed question that people ask about the future?
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I honestly thought a lot more of you would be gone after lunch. There are a lot of people sitting here listening to what we have to say. So that video was our attempt at just encouraging our residents and everybody else that is reading the newspaper to take a deep breath. We are not out of water. We are active. That whole study that came out talking about the Hassayampa subbasin really was essentially all Buckeye. That Hassayampa subbasin is Buckeye. And the study comes out and says if we take a static approach to managing that basin and not bringing in new waters, that we will have trouble with wells that are at the higher ends of the bathtub that is the Hassayampa in 100 years. And what we're trying to make sure people understand is we're not taking a static approach to managing that basin. We're taking a very active approach in procuring the NIA water that we had talked about. We recharge water out of our wastewater treatment plants. We're in a purchase agreement right now, purchasing new waters coming into the AMA and the Hassayampa Basin from Harquahela. We think that's a tremendous opportunity for us moving forward. So what we'd like to say is no, we're not out of water. And what I'd like to do is on 3, have all of you say it with me. We're not out of water. 1, 2, 3, we're not out of water. Thank you very much.
So the message, I mean, getting the facts out there, I think Sarah's presentation of just what is the real story of water, and it's complicated, the need for Buckeye to talk about what does it mean now versus what do we do in the future. The messaging's key on this. So how, for this room, how has those questions and the skepticisms and the need to sort of lay out the facts, how has that impacted growth and development, and how you see Buckeye's future?
Yeah, so I see, once we get through the analysis and then working on our own assured water supply, or our designation, become a provider, we are in control of our own destiny. So we'll have that portfolio of water, which we're working on building up right now, that allows us to say yea or nay on certificates of assured water supply for growth. It allows us to dictate what types of opportunities can come into the city of Buckeye. And that's the story we really need to get out. That issue, when it came out on the Hassayampa subbasin, was not just a Buckeye issue. And I had friends calling me from Texas saying, you guys are out of water. Completely not the case. It happens at the same time that a completely separate issue is happening on the other side of town. And then that all gets spun up into everybody's out of water. And that makes a big, big difference in how we attract new businesses, we had an engineer that his sister is a nurse in Wisconsin and says, well, I was thinking about retiring to Arizona, but y'all are out of water. And he said, no, that's not the case. So that story gets out, and what we have to do is combat that with the facts and the truth about, Sarah laid out how well we have managed water in the past here, and we'll continue to do that same thing. We had, essentially back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, this same set of events where we had this massive growth ahead of us, and we're looking for those outside the box ideas. In the 60s, 70s, and 80s, they said, well, let's build a 336-mile canal that connects Havasu to Tucson. And I think if I was around at that time, I would say, that's crazy. And you wouldn't proceed with something like that. But we had some people that had some real forethought and could see the future and the vision for what we had coming. And that little canal has fueled the growth in Arizona over the last 40 years. So I think that's what we need to do, is keep our eyes on the prize, make sure that we're speaking facts and truth about where we actually sit with water, not only in Buckeye, but the Metro Phoenix area and the state of Arizona.
Yeah, I appreciate the reference to Rio Verde, and I think Doug Dunn really appreciated him explaining the facts behind what's going on there in this neighborhood dispute, and hopefully, I would hope that the press would cover the solutions when EPCOR can work with SRP to actually resolve that with the same, amount of noise that they come from. because I think that perception of these few neighbors is really kind of baked into. These are from the CEP perspective.
But I could also argue that it's incumbent upon all of us to be telling that story without a crisis hitting. That if we don't inform the hundreds of thousands of new people that are moving to the state on a regular basis, they're coming for a reason. They're coming for the landscape. They're coming for the opportunity. The same reasons that have brought people to Arizona over the years. If they stop and think about how small this state was at statehood and how large it is, more importantly, the contributions it's making not just to national defense, by the way, with our military installations that have never left the state. They are still here. With the businesses that were created during the war because it was safer to have those industries here. With the agriculture community that continues to grow by doing things differently today than they may have done in the past because they feed the country. Those are all reasons why people love moving to Arizona, but it hasn't happened by itself. It's happened because everybody in this room and the people who've gone before us, and hopefully the ones who will come after us, recognize that it's a unique environment that can be harnessed for the future of not just the state, but for future generations in the country.
So y'all can listen to them answering my questions, or hopefully you can start the text up there so you can text the questions right up here. Lisa, I think from the CEP perspective, or from your West Valley history perspective, do you have any examples of how people have come together that sort of collaborative effort among water users in West Valley?
So I looked at it, or I experienced it first in working for Congressman Stump and watching how no matter what part of the state the members of the congressional delegation represented, either in the House or the Senate, they worked as a team to make sure that Arizona had the resources. It's a very, very junior state, and members of Congress who didn't necessarily have seniority at the time. But when we look at the Carl Haydens and the John Rhodes and the people who devoted decades of time and effort to get the story across to the contributions that Arizona was making, those are important. Your elected officials in this generation are also very committed to making sure that we have the resources that we need to grow and develop our state to its full potential. It's a matter of being informed. We've got a lot of people that are moving here on a regular basis, and I think they're very respectful of the fact that they're moving to a desert state, but they don't always understand how it operates. So the fact that each one of you is here today makes you an ambassador to showing how we're not wasting resources, whether it's water or anything else, that we have devised our own opportunities to be able to take a limited resource and turn it into things that no one could have imagined even a decade ago.
Mayor, I think maybe the same thing. As a leader in the valley, you've talked about some of the things that the city of Buckeye has done, but how do you see this working together as a region? How can the partnerships that would come out of a room like this help advance those?
Yeah, actually, this event has been just incredible. Good on you, Sintra, for putting this together. So the speakers that have come up and talked, and all of them talking about projects that all of us as stakeholders in water in the valley are a part of, whether it's the Bartlett Dam height increase or dealing with the waters in Roosevelt and that safety margin that's in there, or working together with our neighboring communities to develop infrastructure that treats the brackish water that is in the southern Buckeye area, and actually in quite a few areas in the West Valley. It's working together collaboratively to figure this stuff out. It's working with our irrigation districts, Buckeye Water Conservation District, and the Roosevelt Irrigation District, and coming up with these strategies, the pipe tie-in that connects the CAP to the salt system, all that stuff working together. Those are the solutions that we need. Not one of those is the ultimate solution, what we're dealing with. It's a mixture of all of that. If we all work together, not only here in the West Valley, but in the state and in the southwestern United States, leveraging partnerships that we have here with state funds that are coming in and WIFA and we'll talk about a bunch of money that we need here real soon. But what the legislature has put up for water augmentation in the state, what the federal government is working on in the southwestern United States, I think there is such a push and so much momentum to figure it out with all of these different solutions being in play. I think we just need to keep heading that way. We're not going to do it ourselves in Buckeye. We want to make sure that we're working with our neighboring communities, the state and the federal government to come up with solutions for all of us.
Great. Lisa, I want to maybe get into CAP a little bit. And you talked about the importance to educate and reach out to particularly a lot of the new residents in the valley. I know CAP's done a lot of good outreach and maybe video, but you want to talk about some of what CAP's done to help educate folks in the state?
So one of the things that I think as a board member I'm most proud of is the fact that the doors are always open to convene conversations. If they weren't, CAP would barely even be noticed on your tax bill. If you go on your tax bill, you will see that each one of you in this room is contributing to the welfare and the operation of the Central Arizona Project. A lot of times, taxing authorities don't necessarily tell you what they do. We have a very engaged, robust board, a phenomenal group of people who run the operation on a day-to-day basis. You heard from a couple of them today, including our general manager. And the board is engaged as well, because if you're going to live someplace, you ought to know how it operates. So the board has made sure that we are engaged in the communities. We meet regularly, I think, a very regular cadence with the elected officials in every one of the communities that we serve. It is a privilege as a board member to be able to have that direct communication with the people that we serve, because you don't notice it on your tax bill. Most people don't even know what comprises their tax bill.
We're all done.
But it's on there. We want you to understand that this is a project that was envisioned a long time ago. We have an unending relationship with the federal government because it's a federal reclamation project. And whether you know it or not, you're contributing to that every time you pay your taxes. We're grateful for that because we can also open the doors and explain exactly how we've harnessed that water. We love to make sure that people understand what that canal looks like and how it operates and how it ends up. Our partners in every one of the communities that we serve are critical. Our doors are open. We have very open conversations at all times. You'll see not only the CAP staff who are phenomenal, but also the board engaged on a variety of conversations in the three-county area. But we also have a very good working relationship with SRP. So the water community in the state of Arizona, while there might be competition for resources at times, I would say, at least in my years of being involved in public policy, is probably one of the strongest in the United States because we're all heading in one direction. And that is to make sure that the state is as successful as it possibly can be on behalf of everybody who has chosen to live here.
Should we play the CAP video?
Absolutely.
All right. Is it over? All right, the questions are coming in, which is great. So I'm going to take one of these. Flood irrigated neighborhoods is a good use of our water supply. I think this goes to some of Lisa's questions about the history and understanding where we are, where we've come from. certainly Laura talked about some of the work that's being done with the home builders on what do new builds look like, and I think Doug talked about this a little bit as well. A lot of the newer neighborhoods we see here are really are designed on dry desert, are designed without a historic water supply, and are really low water use. Where we see that a lot is in the historic neighborhoods, and that comes to what Leslie talked about, the history of where this came from, that these are houses that were built on farms. They may be flood irrigating some of their property right now, but that's still a lot less than when that entire property was flood irrigated in orange orchards or other agriculture. And SRP's done a phenomenal job of working with the cities and their customers to make sure that that's being used appropriately. Frequently it looks like a lot of water because you see every 2 weeks all the water being put on, but you don't see every single day the water comes out of a sprinkler. And so, while it may look a little bit different, there is some real big benefits that deep irrigation provides. And when you drive around Phoenix and you look at some of the heat islands, you look at what old established trees do to neighborhoods, it really does help with the temperature. And so I would say, like Sarah talked about, it's complicated. Just because you see someone put a lot of their water on all at once, rather than a little bit every day, that shouldn't trigger you that they say that's instantly bad or that's wasting. There are a lot of benefits from that. And so I think, like everything in water, it's very complicated. So that's my answer to defending flood irrigation. Lisa, we had a question about the cost of new water and reclaimed water based off the economies of scale. And that if we conserve and we add new water, aren't we just, does it make it uneconomic? And I think that goes to some of the questions about the origin of CAP and bringing in renewable supplies, take it off of those unsustainable non-renewable supplies. So you want to talk a little bit about the economics?
That was exactly what the fight was about. And the fight was on our part to make sure that as a relatively new state and a very junior state, as far as the river was concerned, that you couldn't rely on rain. You couldn't rely on any of the other. There had to be a supplement for what we had, and we were willing at all costs to get to that point. Go back and look at the history of the Central Arizona Project and the time and the effort that was invested by the leadership of the state, working with the members of the congressional delegation to get that point across. And you'll run across names like Carl Hayden and Mo Udall and John Rhodes, who spent their entire careers, and Congressman Stump, all of them. It was an annual exercise for Arizonans to come back and explain to colleagues outside of the state of Arizona how important that water was. We had already proven the importance of our manufacturing capacity during World War II, when this state stood up a lot of operations to be able to prepare for the United States being in a war. That left a lot of people all of a sudden wondering, how in the world did they do that in Arizona? We harnessed our resources, and it helped the fight. You had a whole bunch of people come back from the war that might have trained at Davis-Monthan or at Luke Air Force Base that wanted to make this home. In order to provide for that, you have to have water for that growth. And the same ingenuity that has been represented in the state through the Native American community and anybody else showed up in manufacturing as well. Think about what has been the foundation of our business and how it continues to grow. What's the one constant? You have to have people to do the work, but more importantly, you have to have water to be able to have those jobs in the first place.
We've paid for it. I think that's the key.
We have paid for it.
Reliability has a cost, and we in Arizona have paid that cost. We've built SRP, we've built CAP, and we've paid for it rather than relying on unreliable supplies.
We invested.
Yep.
And we were willing to make that investment knowing full well that we would be repaying that bill for generations to come. It's worth every penny that was invested, not only from a political decision, but authorization and appropriation every year. It was phenomenal to see the entire water community in the 3 county states come back to Washington, D.C. on a regular cadence every year and explain to their colleagues who had water flowing from, they never had to worry about water, explain how important it was. It's what it was an investment of time and effort that is going to pay off for generations in the future.
So I think we're right about time. Mayor, and we get 60 seconds of optimism. What do you got?
On 3 again. 1, 2, 3. We're not out of water. All right. I didn't hear it that loud that last time. but I think that's what we have moving forward. It's we're very optimistic about the future. There are a lot of opportunities that are out there, and I think if we continue to work together on these to develop these water resources that we put into our portfolio, we are going to do really, really well as a state. I also want to point out one thing. We'll have probably 15 seconds left. I want you all to consider this. I did real rough mayor math. I think there's 50-something tables here at 8 people per table. Centra went into Bevmo and ordered 500 of these. Just take that with you. Centra, thank you for inviting me up here to be on the panel. A mountain of opportunity for us as a state. I really appreciate that there are some very smart people that are leading the charge on developing these water resources and working these plans together to create an incredibly bright future, not only for the state, but for the West Valley.
All right, well, I like to run a tight ship on my fireside chats. I think we're out of time. Appreciate closing with some optimism, and we'll turn it back.